what have your fathers kind of imparted on you that really first thought comes to your mind?
Listening. Um, he used to talk a lot, and I used to listen. And I still do that today, and I think not a lot of people do that. Like you can see it in conversations with people where you can see that you're talking to somebody and they're less so listening to you, more so waiting to say something. Um, so
I know
probably the
exactly what
most,
you mean. No.
yeah.
Importance of bucking up and handling your business, man. Um, we had tragedy early in my life. I lost my mother, and he didn't let it lose a beat, man. He picked it up and was like, you know what, we're gonna make this work, and he just kept going on through everything.
Yeah,
And with me and my sister, and later on, I had another sister, and he's helped raise her too. So I mean, it's
that's
never
right.
stopped on the grind. Um, not shirking responsibility at all ever. Just you handle yours, and that's
Mhm.
For me, I didn't grow up with my biological father. I had many fathers, I guess you can say. I had a stepfather, I had my grandfather, and I had my uncles, um, who are, I guess, more or less the catalyst for who I am today. Um, I think what I learned from all of these gentlemen were is fortuity, right? I think they instilled in me this kind of steadfastness, and it has led me down the path that I've been on today. Not that it was a really glorious one, because there have been some ups and some downs for sure. But here I am. I'm successful. I have a family of my own,
Mhm.
and if it wasn't for them as a collective, I think I wouldn't be the man I am today. So,
Your parental figures aren't always your biological, and that's important to recognize too. Isn't necessarily your biological father. It happened to be for me,
right.
um, which I feel lucky to have. Because I do know a number of other people in a similar situation to you as well, Eric. Um, and being whatever role you are as a father figure, Ethan, you play a big part into
Landon. Yeah, my nephew.
Landon, and being that parental figure. Uh, so Ethan's sister, her um, biological baby daddy, kind of just disappeared completely.
Yeah, like from the
So
very
Ethan's kind of uncle slash father for Landon,
same with my dad. He's granddad and dad. I mean,
right?
kind of a balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um, so, kind of starting that off and transitioning into our first topic, the talk, right? And as a father, talking to your children about race, and for all of us, inevitably, if we have kids or not, um, then me having a kid, my son being half African American, the talk about race becomes a little bit more complicated, right?
Mm.
Uh, and instilling identity, right? And I think that, me personally, I believe that we're more than just this, right? Um, I believe in consciousness, and I believe in energy, and I believe that we're more than just our physical self, right? Whatever that is, however you define that. Um, but I know, and I live in a realistic world where I know the importance that society puts on race, right? I can't play that off and say, hey, I'm self-denying and just believe in this thing, so right, race doesn't matter. That's naive to believe that, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I believe that our consciousness is our true identity, and each of us needs to have a balance in our consciousness. Referring to my opening monologue, I believe you really need control over your mandala, right? And if we repress and prohibit, where does that go, right? It goes into our subconscious, creating ugliness and hate. And as a father, I've had to do a lot of self-reflecting and look at my imperfections and say, hey, I'm okay with not always being perfect, having these flaws, but how can I work on them? How can I turn them into a strength, right?
Right.
And for being a father with a daughter too, Eric, you create that animus, which is that archetype, right, in her subconscious that she knows of, and is constantly operating inside her, right?
Right.
And as a father to a son, we're that example for them directly.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I really feel that you need to love yourself to, again, teach them, to shape them. And I think that's of the utmost importance. What is your all opinions on that?
I agree 100%. I think the difficulty lying in that is, you said to love yourself. And I think the first step, even before loving yourself, is to know thyself.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know who you are. You have to ask yourself the difficult questions, and be a natural detective about your own consciousness to be able to love it, to further understand it. You may not understand it in its entirety. I don't know.
That's an ongoing process, I believe.
Exactly.
Tat Famasi, that is lifelong,
Exactly.
right? That doesn't just come and go.
And I think we also have to remember that we're living this life for the first time, and we're going to make mistakes. We're going to make some terrible decisions. I know I have.
Oh yeah.
We learn from it, right? And we grow,
right.
and we develop, contingency plans so you don't repeat those same mistakes, and then you instill that into your son or your daughter, And I think again, the first step is knowing yourself, because the more you know yourself, the more comfortable you are with yourself in your own skin, and that's what we have to instill in our children, is being comfortable in their own skin, whether they see themselves as African American, Caucasian, Oriental, whatever it may be. Just being comfortable with who and what you are, and to know who and what you are. That cultural integrity, or that cultural capital, I think is very important to instill in them, or conceptualize in them from a young age.
Yeah, and respecting other people's culture.
Absolutely, for
right?
sure. Absolutely.
And we should celebrate our differences, right? And if we break all those down, there's a lot more similarities than there are differences, isn't there? Like we've talked about in previous weeks. There's a lot more similarities, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, the biggest one being we're all human, but
we're all
that
human.
seems to just over people's heads.
For sure.
In regards to the talk, to be completely honest, I never really had it.
Really? Yeah. How old were we when we had that talk, everybody? And you never really had it.
I never had it. No. I never had the talk, but sometimes you just really don't need it, especially if you come from certain places. Like you just get it. When you have interactions with people that make you realize that, oh, they see me in a different way, then that just instills it in there for you. When you have that interaction with the police and they treat you a certain way for absolutely no reason, you just get it. So the talk was just, for me personally, just life experience. Like I never had the formal talk, but I didn't really need it because I understood.
Right.
You live enough and you have enough experiences that you learn that you have to move different. You have to move a little differently than everybody else for self-preservation, you know,
So your parents were proponents then for self-sufficiency, I'm guessing.
which sucks, but you know, that's life.
Sorry, it was a little,
I mean, I
little glitch there.
play a little lagging here. I feel like it was kind of early on. I can't remember, I can't pinpoint a specific, age. But I mean, there was always a bit of tension because my maternal grandmother really didn't like my dad. Like, she didn't like him. And it wasn't until
Really?
no, dude, she did not like him. She didn't like, I mean, she did not like my dad, and I never understood it for the longest time. He would always, when she was coming over, he would leave. And I always thought that was so weird. I was like, I wonder why dad doesn't want to see, grandma when she's coming over. That's so weird. And it came, later on, that, I kind of learned why she didn't like him. And, we did, we discussed issues of race. And like, I remember my dad telling us that there are some people in the world that are just not going to like you. You're not going to do anything. You're not going to even know them. They're not even going to know you. But because I'm your dad, they're not going to like you. And because you're mine, they're not going to like you. And because of who you are, and, as biracial children, they're not going to take to you. They're not going to like you. And, those conversations elaborated, over the years. And then, but like Sid was saying, you see things. And, I feel like, if you're, like I was, growing up, I took time to listen and watch, and see like, current events and stuff like that, try to understand the world that I was living in. And I mean, you see stories, you hear things, and you kind of just over time, like get like this like general sense that like, yeah, I can't move like everybody else moves, like I have to, there's a certain way that I have to be out here to preserve myself. And I mean, I teach my nephew the same thing, man. I mean, I remember we had the talk with him. He was like 7 or 8. And I mean, he was crying at the end of it, but I was like, dude, I'd rather you be crying than you be dead. I'm sorry. Like, I mean, I'm going to tell you things and they're going to be super scary, but you're going to be alive and you're going to know how to move out here to keep yourself alive. So
reality is scary. I mean,
yeah, it is.
It's monstrous.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I told him, like, you can't play the same way, you can't play Army and stuff like that the same way that you and your, like, because he goes out with his friends, his friends who are Caucasian, and like, they're in the park playing Army and stuff like that. And I'm like, and then you hear and think about, what happened to like people like Tamir Rice, man. I'm like, can't do it, dude. It's just, it's not a thing.
Yeah, it's just not worth it.
You can't be out here, like, especially in certain, it's just not safe. It's just not safe, dude. And he was upset, but like I said, I'd rather him be upset and here with us than, being living in a delusion and end up dead.
How old were you when, I would imagine your mom would have had that conversation with you?
I've had the conversations multiple times. My mom is actually, she's actually the best politician I know. She's not in
she probably learned a bunch of skills from her.
Yeah, I did. I learned a lot from my mom. And she's very smooth and classy, but also at the same time, she will just drop knowledge on you that'll just leave you breathless, And I've always constantly had that talk with my mom because she was just kind of like a really predominant figure in my life. And I was actually like 7 or 8. And this has happened when I shared in the last call when the cops stopped us, and had us all in handcuffs and stuff. I mean, that was obviously a realization for me, most definitely. And then following that came like a series of conversations as I got older, not with just my mom, but other men in my life who were influential. And really understanding about like, hey, this is how, as you guys were saying, how you navigate, this is how you preserve yourself. And just kind of hearing from from you gentlemen, and even talking about the subject, man, what a sad world we live in when we have to have these kind of conversations with our children.
Yeah.
You know, they're not even safe to go outside to play toy soldier or to play, you know, army in the street because of fear of some cop may come around and think they have a weapon on them and, you know, discharge their firearm because they felt threatened or whatever, what may be the case. I don't know. How do you talk about this subject? You know, I have a 7-year-old daughter. She's going to be 8 in October. I haven't had to talk with her yet because I don't know how to have that talk.
Mm.
You know, I don't know what would be the right words to educate and to console at the same time. She's still a child, so I want her to do what children do, but I also want her to be knowledgeable of what is expected of her and what she may face as she gets older. I don't know how to do that, to be honest with you. I've given like many briefings and stuff in the military, outside the military, and some really hard stuff. And even kind of thinking about it makes me emotional because I don't know the right words that will educate and console her at the same time. I don't think there are any, to be honest with you. Yeah. And I'm not really quite looking forward to it. But especially in light of everything that's going on now, I have to have that conversation with her.
Yeah.
It has to be a realization. And it's going to rock me. And it's probably going to rock her. Maybe not at the moment, but as she gets older and she starts to see things, it's tough. You're removing the child's innocence because you have to tell them this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
In order to preserve their life, as Ethan was saying. So, I don't know. It's going to be a rocky road, and I'm really not looking forward to it, to be honest with you.